أعوذ بالله الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Now this will be our sixth lesson, and this means that we only have two more lessons to go. So next week will be our last week for this course. Now, in this lesson today or now, we shall be talking about the core international crimes. The core international crime. When you're talking about core means the main international crimes. So these are our lesson's objectives. By the end of the lesson, you should be able to, number one, define and distinguish genocide by explaining its elements, including intent and protected groups under international law. Number two, describe crimes against humanity by identifying their defining characteristics and providing examples of acts that constitutes widespread or systemic attacks against civilians. Number three, explain war crimes by outlining serious violations of international humanitarian law and recognizing examples committed during armed conflict. Then lastly, analyze the crime of aggression by explaining its meaning and identifying the role of state leadership in planning or executing acts of aggression. So in brief, we shall cover these four types of international crimes. So these are what is known as what? International core crimes. So number one, genocide. Number two, crimes against humanity. Number three, war crimes. Then lastly, crime of aggressions. So these are the four common types of crimes under the international criminal law. So number one, let us start with number one. Number one is genocide, the crime of crimes. Jaraim. There is no bigger crime than this. That is why it is called the crime of crimes. You know? So, what is the definition of genocide as per Article 6 of the Rome Statute? So, genocide means any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnical, racial, or religious groups as such. So here, they are basically telling us genocide means any of the following acts. Number one, killing members of the group. Direct murder. Or number two, causing serious bodily or mental harm, like torture, rape. Number three, deliberately inflicting condition of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction. For example, starvation, withholding medicine, forced displacement into deadly environment. Like this is what is happening in Gaza. No food is coming or going is going in, no medicine. They want to displace them. Then number four, imposing measures intended to prevent births. You don't want them to give birth to new generation. Mathalan, forced sterilization or systematic rape. You just rape them. Then prohibition of marriages. Mamnu az-ziwaj. Why? Because you want to remove a complete world generation group from existence. Or number five, forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. Like you are taking children from Somali, from their parents, you are taking them to Congo. So these are the prohibited acts. So any of the following acts, if you do any of these five things, walakin an-niyya, with an intention to destroy completely, then that is genocide. Now, What are the key elements of genocide? So to establish genocide, that is, for example, there is a case that has been forwarded to the International Court of Justice. How do they establish that this is genocide, or this is genocide and this is not genocide? Like, what are they going to do? So there are three elements that must be proven for us to call something or an action genocidal. Number one, protected group. Two, prohibited acts. Then lastly, specific intent. These three things must exist. So number one, protected group. Genocide applies only to acts committed against specific group recognized under international law. These are, so number one, national groups. For example, groups defined by citizenship or nationality. Like what is happening in Gaza, what is happening in Gaza, we can say that it is what? It is genocide, because it is affecting the citizens of Palestine. So that is a national group. Like what happened in Rwanda. They were this, we can argue they were citizens to some end. So number one, we need to prove they are national groups. If we cannot prove they are nationals, then we need to prove they are ethnical group, Kabila, groups sharing a common culture, language, or tradition. So, for example, in Somalia, you have many tribes. If one of the tribe is being targeted, they want to clear that tribe, then that is genocide. And it also happened in Rwanda because there was this tribe called what? Tutsi. They wanted to clear them. They wanted to kill all of them. Or if we cannot establish the ethnical part, we can racial groups. Groups identified by physical or hereditary traits. Racial groups, for example, if you go to America and they start eliminating the black Americans, so that is a racial groups. All the black Americans, they're being intentionally attacked. So that is racial. Or hereditary trait. Hereditary, for example, the albino, for example, they live in a given place and you're trying to wipe them out of existence. Then religious groups, groups sharing the same religious belief, just like what is happening in Gaza. They are all Muslims. So if you look at what is happening in Gaza, like all this, there is the national group. It has been proved by South Africa in the International Court of Justice. Then there is the religious group. It has also been established. You know, then the ethnical, they share the same culture in Gaza, the same language, Arabic, the tradition are the same. So, warning, or this point is very important. Political, social, or economic groups are not protected under the Genocide Convention. So, for example, if it is in Somaliland, maybe they are killing the groups of Kumlie or Ka or I don't know what. There are many groups. So that cannot be a genocide. So you don't associate political groups or social groups or economic groups. They are not associated. So under the Geneva Convention, it's only these four. Okay. So you need to establish, number one, these four things. They need to be under the protected group, right? Then number two, the act has to be prohibited. So what you are basically saying, genocide is not limited to killing. So you cannot just kill 10 people or 20 and we said it is genocide. No. The law recognizes 5 acts, which when committed against a protected group may constitute genocide. Number one is what? Killing members of the group specifically. So that is a ground for a case. Number two, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, like what is happening in Gaza or what is happening in Sudan also. It can be called a genocide. Number three, deliberately, I'm done, deliberately inflicting condition of life calculated to bring about the group's physical destruction. For example, starvation, we saw it in Gaza. They were not allowing food, water, even shelter to go inside. Or forced displacement, they were forcing them to move from their original homeland to another place. You know, so all these acts, you can imagine, they are not acceptable. You know, and there are some also plans. They're just saying they want to displace them in Somaliland. Wa inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Okay, number five, forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. So please, can you be silent when you're talking about forcibly transferring children? For example, the children, you are in one country, they are taking you to another country. Forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. So you have Somalis, you take them to Ethiopia, you take them to Djibouti, away from their parents. You go and they learn another culture. They are assimilated. They forget about their grandfathers. So this, we need to establish all these things for a genocide to exist. And somebody,
walaal guuleedow muudkal dor aliya
okay. Then another, Ajib Allah. The third thing that needs to be established is the specific intent. Like, we need to establish, yes, please, is there a question?
Yes, teacher.
No.
What about if you forcefully separate the family? Example, you take away from the parent and you deploy to other country. Is this part of the genocide?
Yeah, exactly. This is what we have said here. It is related to the fifth point also. So it is what you are saying. It's also part of genocide. Yeah. Okay. Is it clear?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's continue. So the third thing that needs to be established is the nia, that unaka qasd, deliberately. Somebody wants to do something deliberately. So genocide is distinguished from other international crime by the requirement of specific intent. The perpetrator must intend to destroy the protected group. Khalas, yani, his intention is to kill, is to clear. Number two, the destruction may be in whole or in part. Either the destruction is kulliyan or juz'iyan. We can determine whether it is whole or part, mafish mushkila. But the intention should be there. The intent must be direct, the intent must be directed at the group as such, not merely at individuals. So the intent must be directed to the whole group. Remember those four groups: the nationals, the ethnic. So it should not be, hey, Muhammad, we'll kill you, Muhammad. No. But if it is directed to the whole community, Somalis or Ethiopians or what, so it should not be directed to an individual. No. And the intent can be inferred from, how can we know the intention? How can we know that they want to clear people? The intent can be inferred from systematic patterns of violence. Like look at the system of violence in Gaza. Look the way they are attacking. Look at the way they are doing what? Look at the way they are killing. There is a specific pattern, a pattern that is intended to kill, a pattern that is intended to displace people from one area and take them to another area. Number two, scale and repetition. Scale means what? Al-hajm, the magnitude. Very big, the scale of the attack. Many people are dying. Look at the scale in Gaza. They have destroyed all the infrastructure, the schools, hospitals, the roads, the bridges. And it is repeated. Like on a daily basis, they were bombing it. Like every day, they were bombing. That is an intention. Then, lastly, hate speech or policies targeting the group. Hate speech, khitab al karahiyya. Like, for example, when you go to Israel, the prime minister is talking, they have the hate speech. The Ibn Ghafir, what is his name? They talk it, khalas, just know that the Palestine, they are not human beings, they are animals, they don't deserve anything. So the hate speech. And if you go to the court of Israel, they've been taken to the International Court of Justice. South Africa, if you go and research more about their case, they have shown all this evidence. All this evidence, they've shown it to the International Court of Justice, you know? So these three things needs to be established. So in whole or part, remember we've been talking about juz'iyan or kulliyan. Genocide does not require total extermination of a group. So for genocide to exist, it does not mean that khalas, we need to kill all the Palestine for the genocide to be there. No. Targeting a substantial part of the group. For example, leadership. Targeting, like look, for example, targeting the Hamas, targeting the leadership of that particular group, all of them. How many leaders from Hamas have been killed? Or men of fighting age. Look what is happening in Gaza. They were killing young people. And this is what also happened to Rwanda. So they are targeting young people. And even this was the policy of Firaun. If you read in the Holy Quran, there was genocide, actually. What Firaun was doing was genocide. Why? You know, if they had you like giving birth to a baby boy, they used to cut, because they knew that these baby boys, they are going to be used, they are going to defend, they're going to be strong. Or a regional population, like Gaza is a region. So all this may satisfy this requirement. Now, how can you distinguish genocide from other crimes? This is not that important, it's direct. And we have an examples of what? Of genocide. Now, we are through with the first international crime. Now, the second international crime is crimes against humanity. So what are these crimes? They're very different from genocide. Genocide is top on the list. Yes, please. Now,
is there any limit number that reflect it is a genocide? Example, I mean, is there any limited number or target population when the genocide happen can calculate it and labeling it is genocide?
Wow, that's an interesting question. So I think that is a question you need to research, and I also have to research more about it, because when I was reviewing the research and the books, when they're talking about the genocide, they don't give a specific number. For genocide to be established, there is no number, you know? There is no number, but the number has to be big. That is why, if we go back here, Where did we mention it? Where did we mention it somewhere? The scale. The intent can be inferred from the scale. So the scale can also means it has to, the number has to be very big, but they don't give the exact number. The number is not there, but it has to be a very big number. So the scale has to be very big, but they don't give a specific number. But that is something we can research more, and we can research more and find if scholars, books, they do what they have written something about it. It's a very interesting question. Now, number 2 is the crimes against humanity. So what are they? So crimes against humanity are among the core international crimes recognized under international law. They are defined in Article 7 of the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. So what are they? Crimes against humanity refer to certain means hunak, certain prohibited acts committed as part of a widespread or systemic attack directed against any civilian population with knowledge of the attack. So there are certain prohibited attacks we shall see. We shall talk about those prohibited acts. So they are committed as part of a widespread. So they are widespread, sharia. They are widespread, like happening each and every time. And they are systematic attack directed against any civilian population with knowledge of the attack. Like, for example, even what is happening in Sudan, we can call it partly as crimes against humanity. Now, how do we establish again? How do we establish that this is a crime against humanity? How do we establish it? And also, you have to distinguish this from, you have to distinguish crimes against humanity from genocide. So genocide was very specific, but these crimes against humanity, it's any civilian in your, and remember in our last lesson, we defined who a civilian is. So to establish that this crime is a crime against humanity, number 1, the attack should be directed against a civilian population. Number 2, it should be widespread or systematic. Number 3, state or organizational policy. Then ilm al-ma'rifa, the knowledge of the attack. So let us start with the first one, attack directed against a civilian population. An attack refers to a course of conduct involving multiple acts, not a single isolated incident, you know? So when you're talking of an attack, this attack should be systematic. It should not just be a one-time thing, then khalas, masalam. Like today, the civilians are being attacked. After another 3 days, or on a weekly, it can be on a daily basis or a weekly basis. So it should be regular or occasionally. The victims must be civilians, meaning persons not taking part in hostilities. Only civilians, those who are not engaged in war or hostilities. So it cannot be the military, it cannot be police. The attack may occur in times of peace or armed conflict. So it can be in times of peace, or it can be in times of armed conflict. The country can be in a conflict, or the country can just be in peace, but there are some demonstrations. Like just the other day in Boroma, Somaliland, you are having some demonstration. So in that act of demonstration, if a particular group of civilians are being attacked, then it can be established that is a war against civilians. Then, unlike war crimes, crimes against humanity do not require a connection to armed conflict. So, like war crimes, as we shall see, war crimes, it has to be related to armed conflict. But this one, crime against humanity, like we have said, it can happen during times of peace or times of conflict. Then number two, widespread or systematic nature. The attack must be either widespread, many attacks, or systematic. It has a system. So what is the meaning of widespread? It should be large scale nature of the attack. It should be not as a small scale, large scale. Number two, involves a high number of victims. Many civilians are inflicted or affected, occurs over a broad geographic area. For example, it can be like if it is happening in Mogadishu, the whole of Mogadishu, that is, it's a broad geographic area. But if it is just in a small area, then it cannot be crime against humanity. Then what is the meaning of systematic? It means that it is organized and methodical pattern of violence. So it is organized. You have organized group, gangs, or goons. They are attacking people. The methods, even the methods they are using to attack the people. The methods. For example, it can be they can use guns as a method. They can use pangas. They can use weapons. They can attack maybe at night, at daytime. So their methods, they have a different methodology. Then involve the use of state or organizational resources. So it also involves the use of what? The government is giving resources, or there are a lot of organizational resources that are being used. So only one of these, widespread or systemic, is required, not both. It can either be widespread is enough to establish it. Then state or organizational policy. The acts must be committed pursuant to or in furtherance of a state or organizational policy. So this policy does not need to be formally written. It may be inferred from. So repeated acts of violence, when something is being repeated, it means it has been organized. That is why it is repetitive. Coordination, there is a very good coordination among perpetrators. Then lastly, use of official institution. The military, the police, the militias, just like the same thing that happened for example, in Boroma, like you see the military, they were attacking the civilians, and there were a good number of civilians died. And who knows, maybe a commission can be formed to organize, to bring them into books. Then lastly, there is the knowledge of the attack. The perpetrator must be aware that their conduct is part of a broader attack against civilians. They do not need to know all details of the plan, but must understand the context of their actions. So if you know al-marifa about the attack, you have any information about the attack, that is enough to establish that is war against humanity or civilians. Now, what are the prohibited acts constituting crimes against humanity? Number one, murder, just killing people, ashwaiya, unlawful killing of civilians. In demonstration, people are protesting, you start killing them. Number two, extermination, mass killing, or deliberate deprivation of food or medicine. Mass killing, or you are depriving people from food or medicine. Food is not going in, enslavement, exercising ownership over persons, including human trafficking, deportation or forcible. We have forcible deportation or forcible transfer of population, imprisonment, torture, rape, persecution. So all these are acts that constitute what? Crimes against humanity. There are many examples. Now, because of time, we only have 10 minutes remaining, or less than 10 minutes. The third one is the war crimes. Now, this is what is related to what we were covering in the first 4 lessons. Because remember, in our first or three, the last lesson, we were talking about the international humanitarian law, or the law of war. And we talked about the different types of the different types of conflicts or war. So what are war crimes? War crimes are serious violation of international humanitarian law. Remember last week we were talking about the humanitarian law. You need to protect the civilians, you need to protect the medical ward, you need to protect the prisoners of war, but now you have completely violated all this. So they are prohibited under the Geneva Convention of 1949. You know? So war crimes involves breaches of rules intended to limit the effects of armed conflict by protecting persons who are not or are no longer participating in hostilities, and by restricting the means and methods of warfare. Now, applicability of war crimes. War crimes apply only when there is an armed conflict. So it is not like the war against humanity. It is completely the opposite of what you were just talking about. What you were talking before can happen during peace or during conflict time, and only the civilians are being targeted. But in this case, war crimes apply only when there is an armed conflict. في وقت الحرب فقط. And the war can be international armed conflict. Remember in our previous lesson, we discussed and classified the types of armed conflict: fighting between two or more states, or non-international armed conflict, fighting between a state and organized armed groups. For example, in the case of Somalia and the Al-Shabaab, that is a non-international armed conflict. So the existence of armed conflict is a threshold requirement for war crimes. So without armed conflict, the war crime does not exist. Now, what are the key principles of international humanitarian law? So remember in our last lesson, we discussed about this principle, so I will not explain it in detail. So this principle, it has to be maintained in war. If you don't maintain these principles, then we can call it what? We can call it a war of crime. So there is the principle of distinction. So we have civilians and we have non-civilians. So we have to distinguish between these two. But sometimes there's some army soldiers. When you don't distinguish this, then it becomes a war crime. Then the principle of proportionality. The attack has to be balanced. It should not be excess, like what is happening in Palestine. What is the proportion? Is it balanced? No, it is not proportion. They are doing more than enough. That is gross misconduct. And that is war crime. So there is genocide in Gaza, there is war crime, there is war. We just ask Allah to help them. Principle of military necessity. Al-Hunak al-Haja. Sometimes there is no need of fighting or shooting. You don't need sometimes when to use military. But if you use military when you're not supposed to use it, that is a war crime. Principle of humanity. You need to, there's some people who have been wounded, captured, people who have surrendered, they need to be treated in a humane way. If you don't treat them in a humane way, then that is war crime. Now, the protected persons and objects. Remember in our last lesson, we talked about all these people being protected. The civilians, prisoners of war, wounded and sick, medical persons. So attack against these protected persons or objects may amount to war crimes. Just try to attack this group of people, then there will be a case of war crime against you. And there are very many. So what are the examples of war crimes? So crimes against persons, willful killing of civilians or prisoners of war, torture, taking hostage, rape and sexual violence, using child soldiers. So this is crime against persons. Number two, crimes against property and objects, intentionally targeting civilian or civilian objects, attacking hospitals, schools, or religious building, pillaging. Pillaging means what? And in Arabic is called nahba. Looting towns or villages, like what the Rapid Support Forces is doing in Sudan. When they attack any town, they kill people. When they kill, they steal, they loot. They loot everything and they go to another town. Then destroying property, not justified by military necessity, just destroying property without any reason. So this is crime against property and objects. Then crimes related to methods and means of warfare. For example, launching indiscriminate attack. Indiscriminate means ashwaiya, any indiscriminate attack. You know, for example, what happened in Australia the other time when there were these Afghan, they attacked, they shoot people in the what? In the beach indiscriminately, using prohibited weapons, for example, the chemical weapons, using human shield, starving civilians, starving them to die. So these are all examples of war crimes. Okay, now, lastly, we have 5 minutes, 2 minutes remaining. So in these 2 minutes, will not be enough. So the last one is the crime of aggression. So the crime of aggression is one of the 4, okay, crimes recognized under. So it is defined in Article 8. So what is crime of aggression? It refers to what? It refers to the planning, preparation, initiation, or execution of an act of aggression by a person in a leadership position, which by its character, gravity, and scale constitutes a manifest violation of the United Nations Charter. So, for example, crime of aggression is what Russia did to Ukraine. So that is an example of crime of aggression. So the acts of aggression. An act of aggression is the use of armed force by a state against the sovereignty, territorial integrity, or political independence of another state. Ukraine has its sovereign, its territorial integrity. But what Russia did was an aggression. So an aggression normally means you attack another country, you attack their land, their sea, any territorial integrity. So example, invasion or attack by armed forces, military occupation, even if temporary. You are military, for example, the military of Somalia go and occupy, military occupation, you occupy Ethiopia, bombardment of another state's territory, blockage of ports or coast, attacking. So, ala kulli hal, our time is up. We have only 30 seconds remaining. So, the key elements of the crime of aggression. Also, to establish that there is a crime of aggression, there need to be 3 things: leadership requirement, the conduct, then the manifest violation of the UN Charter. So, I will send the attendance in your group. So you'll just review. There are a few slides remaining. We cannot cover it in 5 minutes. Then there are some video clips here. You will review to understand more. So we still have 2 more lessons. So next week we shall be covering the 2 more.